Okay. I have no idea what's going on here. Okay. Hi, everybody. I see Lindsay and Debbie. Glad you guys are here. So as you can see, we're obviously just getting started, and this is a new experience for myself and for Suzanne as well. So hi, Gloria. So please just bear with us as we work out the kinks. Hi, Angela, Christopher. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. So I believe most of you, if not all of you, probably already know who I am if you're here. I'm psychic medium Leslie Whirling. I'm also a Reiki master. And so today I will be taking your questions live, as well as some that were submitted in advance, so that we can talk about psychic mediumship, the clear senses, Reiki, all of that good stuff. And so I'm here today with my assistant, Suzanne, who is amazing. And she has been collecting your questions and preparing them for today's Q&A. So we're going to go ahead and start with some of the pre-received questions. And then we are going to also take some of your questions live. So feel free to start adding to the chat. Hi, Ash, Patrick, Jasper, everyone who's tuning in. We appreciate you being here. So we're going to go ahead and start with a couple of the pre-received questions. And at any time, if you're in the live chat, go ahead and start submitting your questions, and Suzanne will pose those to me. Suzanne, it's your floor.
All righty. So we've got a question from Natasha. In the past, before COVID, on Halloween season, there are always haunted houses and area attractions. I've heard this is dangerous because evil spirits can get attached to you. Can you please clarify and educate us?
So the interesting thing about this question, I love that it's very much connected to the present since we're approaching Halloween. But the thing about this is that attachments can occur at any time. And it's more important to be mindful of your present state of being versus the place that you go to. You know, I hear the same thing about cemeteries, and I don't discredit that concept. It's just that it depends on your vulnerability. So alcohol, drugs, they sort of lower our guard, lower our defenses, and make us more vulnerable to attachments. Anger, mental health issues, inclusive of things like anxiety and depression, also tend to make us more vulnerable to attachments as well. And so it's important to be mindful of being grounded, energetically protected, and focused on how you are mentally, energetically, versus the space that you're going to. Of course, some places are going to have more spiritual energy, whether it's a negative entity or a spirit attachment. And when I say spirit attachment, I mean someone who's crossed over, a living person who's crossed. And so that there are places that will tend to have more of that energy and a higher likelihood for something like that to happen. But I wouldn't necessarily mark a haunted house as that kind of place. You're probably more likely to find it in like a graveyard, or if you go to like a seedy bar or something like that, where, you know, the people around you are not carrying good vibes. And so always pay attention to what you pick up. And if you feel like a place is really negative, then you probably should not go to that place and be more mindful of guarding and protecting yourself.
Thank you. So from Nyaja,
okay.
I am interested in tapping into my mediumship gifts, but I'm afraid that it's something that I can't control and I'll hear voices all day. Kind of ties into what we were just talking about. What can you do to let spirit know when you are ready and when you're ready to turn it off so that you can get peace?
Okay, so that's actually not an uncommon concern that people have. And there are a couple different things that tie into that. So yes, it does tie in part to the question before about energetic protection. Anytime that you are working on your spiritual abilities, your psychic abilities, the mediumship, however you want to frame it, you should be more conscious of grounding and energetically protecting yourself, creating boundaries and rules of your own person as well as of your space. And this is why it's really important to seek out mentors in this process, whether you're going one-on-one with a mentor or working in a group setting, where you can learn the different tools and techniques that help you open up your abilities safely and establish those boundaries and learn different techniques on how to sort of turn it on and off. The thing with the hearing of voices is that that's a level of clairaudience, and most clairaudience is received internally. Pretty much, in my opinion, we all have clairaudience abilities, internal, and we're more comfortable with the sound of our own voice. So when we hear from our angels, when we hear from our loved ones who've crossed over, a lot of times it's coming in with their words, but in the sound of our own voice. And so you're probably already, Nyaja, picking up on your mediumship communication clairaudience.
You froze here, just 1 second.
Not 100% negative. Another issue would be hearing more dangerous chatter, so telling you to harm yourself. Of course, that is a really negative sign. Others, do harmful things to particular places. Another sign would be they're giving me the concept of like the radio stations. Like if you think of old school radios where you would turn the dial and switch from one station to another and they would kind of blend together and you're hearing like different frequencies amongst variations of chatter. That's also a common warning sign of sort of tapping in or tuning into something that's harmful versus helpful. And so a common technique that you can use is setting your boundaries. Turn yourself on, turn yourself off, and that can be inclusive of a light switch, flicking on, flicking down, opening a door, closing a door. There's an array of techniques that you can use, but first and foremost, I would say you need to learn energetic protection as you go through all of this. And I do have resources on my YouTube channel and on my website that you can look at for that. And seeking the help of a mentor so that you can learn what are the guides, who are the guides that you're working with, and then again, the ways in which you receive clairaudient communication so that you can feel more comfortable with it and then start to decipher between the sound of your voice versus the sound of someone else's.
I'm gonna pull one more from the submitted, and then it looks like we have a few questions in live chat. So from Alex, how can I get organized with the info I'm receiving? For example, I'll hear grandpa ask the name and I end up picking the name of someone that the sitter is connected to other than grandpa.
Okay, so you may actually be receiving information from more than one source. And I actually don't feel like that's uncommon. You can literally ask spirit to sort of line up or start to differentiate between who gives you who gives you what. I get a lot of that back and forth with mine. So I tend to find that that happens more commonly at the beginning of a session where I've got grandfather showing up, then I've got someone else showing up and maybe a third person, and I'm getting 3 different things going on. So I'll say, okay, I know the grandfather is here because I'm hearing that. This other person's coming in, and I'm not sure if this information is relevant to grandfather or if this is from somebody else. So I'm going to need your help in deciphering that. But here's what I get, and just start putting it out there so that whoever's sitting across from you can actually be the one who puts the pieces together. And what you may find is that literally they just bounce back and forth. And you can do as much work as possible to try to get them to line up and organize. But inevitably, if someone's taking up a lot of time in a session and someone else, another spirit wants to come in or has an important message or needs to just let their loved one know that they're present, they're going to start dropping stuff in too. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. You just have to learn to work with it and become comfortable with it. But I have found as well that even when that happens, if there's a main person who we really need to connect with in that space and time, they will still get the bulk of your time. It's just that other ones are going to drop stuff in because they want to be recognized too. And really, there's nothing wrong with that.
All right. So from Jasper, any books or card decks, etc., that you recommend, or psychic and mediumship training that you can recommend?
That's a big question. So I really don't have specific resources. I've been asked that question over the years, and I don't really have specific resources to guide you to. What I would recommend instead is look at some of the bigger known mediums, or the mediums who, psychic medium, however you want to frame it, who are in your local area where you feel like your energy resonates with theirs. So I did some one-on-one training for a while here in Austin, and I also just dove into various classes around the area where I was interested in the topics or felt a particular connection to the person holding the class. More recently, this past November, I did some one-on-one training with an international medium by the name of Lisa Williams, and I resonated with her. I feel like our personalities are very similar. And so for me, that was the right environment, but it doesn't mean that she's going to be right for you. But I would look her up. James Van Prague is another one who I've really resonated with, and I've been to a couple of his sessions as well. There's a lot of people out there and a lot of resources. What I would just advise you is, do your research on who you're connecting to, not just the reviews, but look at their bios and see what you get off of them and their live feeds, and see if their energy vibes with yours. And if so, then see what they offer. There's so much out there. Again, I can't really point you in one particular direction, because when I was budding as a medium, I was pretty much guided by my angels not to dive a whole lot into literature. They wanted me to work through my connection with them. And then thereafter, I would pick up certain materials that were reinforcing what I experienced on my own. But then I realized that that's how I needed to work. So I would just do your research, look at local options as well as more popular options like the international mediums, and then start there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's go. We've got one from Monica. I know psychic abilities vary from person to person. I have 2 small dogs, and I'd love to be able to truly communicate with them. For those with this ability, they see images and feel from the animal. Is this something I could learn to do? And if so, how?
I believe that everyone has psychic abilities. And so the ability to communicate with your pet, I would see no reason why you couldn't establish that gift, especially if you already are a clairsentient, which is a feeler, or a clairvoyant, which is a seer. There's also clair-knowing. That is a big part, and I feel it's connected to all of our gifts. And so that's claircognizance. And if you just have that sort of innate knowing or very strong intuition, that would help guide you in your communication with your animal as well. Now, someone who does what I do, which is human and spirit communication, it doesn't mean that I can't communicate with animals, because I do fairly often, but that's not my target. And so I would seek out someone who is an animal whisperer that offers classes online or in person, and start there. It's a lot like working with spirit communication. And so if you are already gifted in a way where you can connect on a mediumship level or even on a psychic level, I would just start practicing with your animal. And one of the ways that I recommend to do that is to visualize your heart energy connecting to theirs. You can also do a third eye to third eye connection, one or the other or both, and use pictures from your mind, verbalize what it is that you want to ask or want to express to your animal, and then picture it happening in your mind and project it to the animal and see how they respond. Be mindful that cats are typically more stubborn to do what you ask them to do, and dogs are usually a better starting place.
Imagine that.
Right.
Gloria is asking if you have specific protection ideas for empaths.
That goes back to the energetic protection that I mentioned earlier. And so if you look on my YouTube channel, I have a video where I will literally walk you through energetic protection, as well as read through the comments that I provide with the video, because it will give you greater tips. But essentially, it's a process where you visualize yourself grounding into the earth and using light to shield or protect yourself. You should also set intentions with your shield or bubble, if you will. And you may also, especially early on, want to start calling in your guides to help reinforce your protective barriers. I also think that it's a good idea to protect your space, not just your person. So whether it's your office, outside of the home, or your home office, or literally your home. My place is, I've got gridding all over the place with crystals, as well as the energetic boundaries that I create. But calling in your guides, shielding, grounding, and being mindful to cut ties with people as well. So when I disconnect from the live feed today, I'm going to cut all the cords around me so that I'm not continuing to give you all my energy, and vice versa. It's a positive thing that everybody should be mindful of doing, especially if you are empathic or perhaps you suffer from anxiety and depression.
Okay, from Angela. I have many guides who communicate with me in different ways, and when I talk to people about it, I get met with skepticism and disbelief. What helped you to be more comfortable sharing your communication with your guides in a way that resonated with your audience?
This is something that comes up frequently, and really a lot of this comes with practice, because the more you practice, the more confident you will be in the information that you receive. And so practice, practice, practice. However, you also have to discern your audience. And what I mean by that is you have to be aware of what your audience is ready for and what they're not. And so if you're talking to your Aunt Sarah, and she's uber religious and super skeptical of the psychic medium world, and all of a sudden you're like, well, this angel came to me and said blah, 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 it's probably not going to bode well for her. And so another common thing that I do is literally say, hey, I had this dream that this happened and that you needed to hear this. Does that make any sense to you? And test the waters, because she may be ready to hear the message, but she may not be ready for the way you set it up. And that's okay. I mean, that's the best part of sort of using your vibration and alignment with somebody else's and sort of feeling your way through it to determine where they are and what they're ready for. Like, this is a part of your gifts, if you will. And so make sure that you really feel out what they're prepared for before you just put it out there. And I did see, Suzanne, Christopher offered a question in the chat as well. And I remember seeing it came in before, but I don't think it made it on the list. So can you make sure the one that he...
About, so the one I'm seeing from Christopher is he's saying he's getting a lot of messages from his angels recently, and he's having trouble. He wants to make sure, like, the best way for him to receive and decipher these, which ties into another question that was submitted, actually.
Okay, so this is really situational, because you probably are getting a lot of information, but if you are feeling bombarded, then you might need to just literally say, hey, angels and guides, please tone it down. Like, this is a lot for me to handle right now, and you have to remember that I'm still just new to this, or I'm budding at my gifts. And so I appreciate your communication. However, I do need some time out to sort of process things and heed the guidance that you give me. Another thing is that if you are really proactive and actually doing the things that your guides are asking you to do, then they're like, hey, he's on board. Let's just keep going from there. And that can kind of shoot you in the foot. And that's, again, where it would be appropriate to say, hey, we need to just kind of calm things down a little bit. And you can be specific and say, I'm not asking for you to stop, but when I'm at work during the day, I need to be focused on that. And so please just make it work relevant. This may also be a sign that it's a good idea for you to sit down and sort of open up a channel or a flow in connection with your guides, where you can start writing out the information that they're giving you, so that you, A, don't lose it, and B, that you can start working on it. But then you're literally setting a specific time frame where you're going to address the things that they give you. Because part of their concern, I'm hearing, is that they don't want you to lose things, but I'm also getting lots of excitement. And so they're just excited about where you are on your journey, and the fact that you're listening to them, that you're seeking out information from them. And so it might be time to start setting some boundaries.
So I have two questions I'm going to put together. Allie from the live chat here, and pardon me, Wendy from submitted questions have some questions about dreams. So how can you discern whether a dream is random, or whether there may be a deeper message or even a contact from the other side? And what are your feelings about dreams and the symbolism in them?
Okay. So this is another instance where it's situational. And this is what I love about what we do, because it's so situational, and it is not black and white, cut and dry. There's all kinds of gray areas with everything. My feelings with dreams where loved ones come in is that, 98% of the time, this is truly a spirit visiting us, and we may hold on to the tail end of it. So we may not remember all of what happens with that person in the dream state, but they may give us an inkling that we can hold on to, so that we know that they actually showed up for us, if that makes sense. When you have a dream about a loved one who is crossed and it's negative, then you need to decipher, okay, am I holding on to fear and concern about their well-being, or is there actually something to fear or be concerned of in regards to their well-being? The majority of the time, it's your own projection that you're putting fear into the dream state, and it's manipulating what occurs or what you remember out of it. However, there are instances where a person's soul is not settled. And I have to say that it is much more rare that that is the circumstance. So for the majority of people, your bad dream about your loved one who crossed probably isn't valid. It's more your concerns over their well-being, like if they took their own life or died tragically in some other form or capacity. Or fears, negative feelings that you may have, that perhaps you left things unsettled. Things were not said that should have been said before your loved one crossed. And so really look back at yourself and how you feel around the dream. Is it my own fears being projected into this state? And if so, that means you have some things to work on. That might be a good time to come and see somebody like me. But if you know your loved one died tragically and you're getting a lot of activity in your house, like banging, weird things, like it seems like they're really trying to get your attention, then they may not have crossed, and we might need to help them in that instance. But look at the rest of the dream too, because I love the dream state. In the dream state, you can astral travel. You can see, places that are beyond your conscious mind here. And that, I think that's a beautiful gift to be able to hold on to it and bring that back in your conscious mind. This is also a great place for your higher self and your guides to reach you, especially if you've got a lot going on in life, or you're sort of new in giving and receiving as far as communication goes with your guides. So pay attention to the signs and symbols that you receive. I would keep a notebook by the bed, write it down, and then go to a dream journal or a dream journal website, spirit animal communication if it's more animal based. If you're getting a lot with numbers, I would look at Joanne Sacred Scribes. She's phenomenal, and she's got a free blog online, and start to decipher it and see, is this relevant to my life or not? And it may not always be obvious at that given moment, because sometimes you're getting forewarnings of things that are about to occur, but just be open. The more open you are to whatever the meaning and the reason is for all of this, the more information you'll continue to receive, which may help you get some clarity around why you're getting what you're getting.
Since we are on the subject and have mentioned numbers,
Okay.
can you share your thoughts on signs from spirit? Do they show as numbers, phrases, or words that repeatedly show up throughout the day or week? How do we know what they mean? And that is from Cassie.
Okay, and so yes, Cassie, your question definitely ties into what I was just talking about. Again, numbers, a good place to start is Doreen Virtue put out, I think, like a little angel book, like a basic book, and it covers some of your basic archangels, as well as, oh, and I guess this is some of that material that someone asked about earlier. She also covers the basic numbers, like 1 through 10 or 11. But again, with numbers, I would resort to Joanne Sacred Scribes. It's a lot of material for each number and each number sequence, but man, if you're looking for what those numbers mean, she's your go-to. As far as other communication goes, we do get a lot with animal symbolism. So you may have random animals showing up at your home, or there may be an odd interaction that's completely, out of the norm with a squirrel one day, or you may have a bird trying to get your attention at your window or your door. And so again, the internet's a great resource for finding out what those specific symbols mean. There's also a guy named Ted Andrews who put out a guide. There's both a little pocket guide and then a big book that you can refer to that gives a lot of details about birds, insects, mammals, and whatnot as far as the animal side goes. But they'll also reach out to us in other ways, like they can use electronics, they can come through in your thoughts, they can come through using music to connect with you. And if you're suddenly sitting and doing something and all of a sudden you think about grandma, she's probably right by your side or giving you a hug. And so be mindful of your thoughts, because those are most often the ways that spirit communicates with us most frequently.
Thank you. Let's see. All right. From Ash, how can we strengthen our telepathic abilities and recognize others with the same ability?
The recognition of others with the same ability can be more difficult. I think that that's where you have to really seek out groups where people are into, growing their spiritual connection, the psychic mediumship, all this side of the metaphysics, if you will. And so finding partners who you can work with in that regards is important. You always have to be mindful as well of ethics. It always comes in, I hear ethos. And if I hear ethos, this is the angels and spirit telling me you're probably about to cross a line and we're not going to give you that information. You have to really be cognizant of that, because it's not fair to just walk down the street and start reading people's minds or tuning into, you know, what they're going through. So ethics is vital as you learn all of the tips and techniques of developing your spirituality. But really, I would guide you into a class about working with the clare senses, because that's going to be your best environment for learning the control, turning it on and off, the protection, you know, ways in which to divulge information that will be useful so that you can get your point across, but without violating somebody, or going against them in a way where they would not be open to receive it. So kind of tying into Angela's question. But really the best way to do it is through practice, and you can form those energetic connections much like you do with animals or with other humans to do this practice. And really it's trial and error.
Pamela would like to know how one would know if they have a guardian angel.
Everybody has a guardian angel.
Hey.
There is not a human being I have met that does not. We will sometimes talk about our loved ones who have crossed over as guardian angels too. And it's similar, but it's not quite the same thing. So what I have learned in my practice about guardian angels is that they follow with us from one life to the next. They're with us in between our lifetimes. Pretty much they know our soul energy inside and out. And so they know us better than anybody. Spirit is a little bit different. When we talk about spirit as a guardian angel, which I think somebody on the live feed was talking about that too. I think Colleen was the one. When it is a person who is crossed over, it's not quite the same thing. What I understand from spirit is that they'll sign a contract essentially to be a guardian over you. And I understand we have multiple spirit guides, multiple angelic guides. We oftentimes even have multiple guardian angels, and sometimes they'll present to me in like a forward fashion and then show me that there are other angels behind them that are a part of that guardian angel team. With spirit, it's a little different. They're not constantly connected to us in the same way that our guardian angel or angels are. They are not necessarily going to be the same spirit who guides you through your next life cycle, but your guardian angel will. And their level of interference is not the same as it would be with an angelic guide. And so angels can interfere like in life and death circumstances, and they can pop in, pull you back so that you don't get hit by the bus, and then move along their way. Whereas a spirit guide is less likely to have that level of interference, as well as less likely to know that, hey, there's about to be something that's going to take us off our path. We got to be right there. But everyone has a guardian angel. And so you can simply start asking them to reveal themselves to you in a dream, or to come to you in meditation. A lot of times, to help us develop that connection, we can also ask for a marker. And so different guides that I have will come through in different ways. Like one who works with me in Reiki healing tends to touch right here. And so as soon as I feel this warmth right here, I know that she is present. I have another one who touches my lower leg and just sends tingling up and down my calf. And that's another guide. You may also see colors connected to a specific guide as well. And so each one is different. You just have to play with how they're going to connect with you, which they can connect with you through all of your senses. But see how they prefer to come through and test them a little bit. You know, ask them, okay, well, what's your name? If you get Angel, look and see, okay, can you prove that to me? And then if you open up a magazine and the first word you see is the word angel, then that's your confirmation. Don't second guess it, trust it.
Awesome. Alex is curious if you were doing mediumship mentoring.
I do on and off. And so back in March, which we all know about March.
What happened?
So I was actually just launching a group mediumship development. I usually have, in the past, I've worked with people one-on-one, and then I've offered classes. And so right now I'm back to offering classes because everyone who had signed up for the group sessions, only one of them was actually able to start something virtually and make the commitment to it. So I would advise you to reach out again in a couple months, or just stay posted to the newsletter that I send out. It used to be monthly, now it's more like every other month or quarterly. But stay posted to my social media, because that's where you're going to find the information about when I'm ready to restart that. Otherwise, I do have an empathy and intuition class that will be hosted via Zoom on November 7th. And so you can look at the website for more details about that, but it's a good place to get started. But stay tuned when it comes to the mediumship development.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. From Ash, how do we know and recognize a romantic relationship that can be spiritually deteriorating to your own spiritual growth?
I think that question aligns with more, I get what you're saying, Ash, so I'm not discarding it. But what I was going to say is that has more to do with being mindful of who you are and where you are in the present, and discerning of where your partner is. And that can be said for any relationship. So use your intuition to guide you through this relationship. Is there balance energetically here? Are you giving a lot more and they're taking a lot more? Okay, and if that's the situation, can you write it so that it becomes more equal? Because there's always going to be situations where someone's more of a giver and someone's more of a taker. And so that doesn't necessarily indicate that it's a harmful relationship, but you have to be able to sort of step back and get an overall view of balance as a whole. Also take a look at your past patterns and habits in relationships so that you can try to figure out, am I repeating something that has become trouble for me in the past? Because if you do tend to be more of a guide spiritually in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or, you know, a family related to family dynamics, or a love relationship, then either you need to start changing your approach because it could drain you, or you need to find a partner who's going to also be able to help teach you too. So this has more to do with the patterns and the habits, being able to discern them, where they are, what they're ready for now versus the potential, and look at the overall dynamics, that which both of you bring to the table. And it is important to recognize potential, so I don't want to discard that. However, if you're holding on to the potential and their actions are not changing, they're not improving, you're not seeing the growth, and it's still this constant give, let me teach you, let me guide you, then there's no true change, and the potential that you're hopeful for probably won't happen, at least not in the present and connected to your existing relationship.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
From Mia Hutchins, how did you know that you should start to develop your abilities? Were you tuned in from a young age, or was there an event or situation in your adult life that triggered your budding?
Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. A little bit of all of that. So yes, I have been connected for as long as I can remember. I mean, as a little kid, I would always talk about like the people that were sitting on my bed, and sometimes I would like, it, I don't need to get into all that, but I would see shadow people. I would see spirit. I could hear the angels talking to me. I could hear spirit talking to me. I knew things were happening before they happened, whether it was a phone call and the phone rings 3 minutes later, or um, having an awareness that there was going to be like a tragic event. And so always I was connected, and it was actually really disruptive in my life. And so last year around this time, I launched a class where it was geared towards helping psychic children and parents of kids who are psychic. And I am going to be bringing that back around probably January or February. I'm also very lightly working on a book about it too, so you should see that as well. But yeah, it started from a young age, and it was really disruptive in my life, which is part of the reason why I'm so passionate about all of this now and helping people, because it really is disruptive when you don't know that you can set boundaries and you can turn things on and off, that you should be protecting yourself and your energy. It is completely disruptive in your life. I think it wasn't until I was in my 30s, my early 30s, that I started to figure all of this out. I went to a meditation group, which is part of the reason why I'm so passionate about guided meditation. I went to it, and all these things that had been happening to me throughout my life sort of started flooding back in, because it's normal that when you're gifted and you're able to connect with different beings, no matter what level you're at, that it's cyclical. So your gifts will probably change from that you had as a child or a teenager. Even when you start your spiritual development, you'll probably see changes in the ways that you get your clairaudience or your clairvoyance, and that's natural. I would expect that. Life keeps moving forward, life keeps changing, so you should change too. But I was unhappy in my work circumstance. We had just moved to Austin, and I found out through a friend about a meditation group, and I went to that. And I had an amazing visual experience my very first time there. And all of these things just made sense. On some level, they just made sense to me. And that night, all the things that I experienced as a kid and a teenager just started flooding back. Hearing people walking around my apartment in my room, sitting on the bed, people coming over, moving my hair, talking to me, like all of this stuff started flooding back in. And I thought, oh shit, excuse my language, but oh shit, I need to get this under control. And so that's when I started to seek out local classes about all of this. And I did some research online. However, I just felt like a lot of it didn't really jive with me. Or I got a lot of conflicting information. So I also sought out a mentor, and I had her do actually a pet reading for me first. And then after that, I connected with her to be a mentor for me. I did also have a life-changing event um, where I was hospitalized. I had gotten very sick from stress and anxiety, which I'd never had anxiety before, but it's common that as your psychic gifts start to open up or expand, that you do become a lot more sensitive. And I hadn't really learned about energetic protection yet. And so there was an important event where I ended up hospitalized, and my sodium levels were 2 points away from my entire organ system starting to shut down. And I was so sick from that. I completely let go of all fear. I didn't care anymore. And everything that was important to me changed. And so, excuse me, because I'm getting emotional, but I will never let go of that. And so it was helpful in me understanding what matters in life. And even though I had already been kind of easing into figuring this stuff out after that event, I knew I had to figure this out and that it was truly my life path. And so I got so low that I had complete clarity about what mattered and who I was. And I started to really dive into the process. And so my hope actually in doing this work is that I can reach people before they have a life-threatening event, because a lot of times when people have those life-threatening events, they have a similar situation. Some people, you know, that I've met have died on the operating table and had these amazing experiences, and they come back and then they realize really where their priorities are and what they need to focus on. And I hope to catch people before they get to that point. But yeah, it's a bunch of different things that happen for me. And so if you are meant to connect spiritually, whether it's through development of your psychic gifts or through, you know, organized religion, if you're meant to do that, you're going to keep getting pushed and pushed and pushed there until you heed it. And the less you heed what you're being guided towards, the more tragic or devastating it can be for you. And so pay attention.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
So Alex would like to know what are good exercises to develop your sight abilities?
Okay, so a lot of that comes through, okay, let me rephrase that. A good way to start working on the visual is through literally visualization exercises like in meditation. So even the practice of the energetic grounding and shielding can help you with that. Visualizing the balancing and alignment of your chakras, seeing words. So I know Alex, so I know she already knows about what this means. Each chakra has various characteristics that are associated with it. So if you're focusing on the heart chakra, for example, that you visualize the bright green energy. Don't force it. See what happens when you start to visualize it, because you may notice one day your heart chakra is a lime green color, or another day it's more of an emerald green. And so see what that looks like to you, but don't force the vision or don't force it to be a specific color. And then take those characteristics and see the words. So love is one of them. I oftentimes will see the word written out in cursive and then see it being absorbed into your chakra. You can also work on, I can't think of the exact term right now, but where you visualize another space. And so if you're sitting in your bedroom, start to work on visualize the living room. And if you can see the living room, start to look at the details of it. This goes with objects too. So if you've got a pen, it would be a good idea to take a strong look at the pen, look at all elements of it, feel the texture of it. And is it heavy? Is it light? Does this part, the metal part, does it feel cold? Look and feel and get to understand the object, and then work on visualizing that object again with your eyes closed. See all the coloration of it. And here there's a lot of detail around the grip. And so you would want to visualize the detail of that too, and start putting the object together in your mind's eye. As you do little exercises like that, that will really help strengthen your third eye vision.
Cool. From Chuck, can you explain the basics of Reiki and how it improves one's life?
Okay. It's a pretty broad question, but with Reiki, this is a Japanese form of alternative healing, if you will, and it is meant to be hands-on. And so you're going to see some practitioners practice with their hands elevated from the surface, whereas others are hands-on. That's a legal issue in the state of Texas. Like, unless you are a licensed physical therapist or a licensed physician and whatnot, you're not supposed to touch somebody unless you literally get their consent. So I practice hands-on, and I always ask for consent. And basically what you're doing is working on balancing and clearing the energy field for a client. You're working on attuning their energy, raising their vibration. It should be a practice that allows you to connect not only with their energetic self, but can also provide a level of physical and emotional healing too. And so each practitioner is different, but when I go in, I start from head to toe. So I start with the crown chakra and work all the way down through the root to get to the feet. And I tend to see past life issues where there may be a block or a burden, or it may help give us some understanding as to why there are certain obstacles we've met in this lifetime, or why there are certain relationships that we have participated in here. I often get spirit guides that come in that help also give us some clarity around why we're going through certain circumstances in the present, and what our strengths are, and where we need some balance. Some people see that visually. So you might open up the yellow solar plexus chakra and see that the light is very dim. Well, that tells us we need to pour a lot of energy healing into that space. And so it should leave you feeling calm and at peace afterwards. Some people get a strong emotional release. This is also a great way to find out if somebody does have an attachment too. And to help clear that, you can also cut cords. There's a lot that happens in a Reiki session. And so anytime that you opt to do that type of practice, you also want to research who your practitioner is. And it might be worth your time to find out how they got their training. However, I would just go by more of what you are sensing is the right connection for you. Because if you can see that someone's a hot mess, or they're going through a lot themselves, they're probably not in a position to do good service for you at that time. And so, always be mindful of your practitioner choice.
So when we're working on clients who suffer from anxiety and panic attacks, should light workers look beyond the chakras and address a broader frequency that may present itself within or around the client? If so, how might we dissipate and dismantle that and heal it out of the energy field? Mark wants to know.
Okay. So yes, you do want to look beyond the chakras at that point and look at the overall energy. You have to remember that we see the physical shell, the skin, the body, but our aura, our energy is much larger than what we are in the physical self. And so definitely you want to be expansive on how you address this, because a lot of times this is an indication that your client is not grounding themselves, or perhaps they probably don't know how to ground themselves. So you want to teach them about doing that, as well as teach them about shielding their energy, that energetic protection exercise that I talk about all the time. Rooting, bubbling up, putting your intentions in there, surrounding yourself with the light and your guides, cutting cords. You have to, in that circumstance, I shouldn't say you have to, but you should then ask your guides, what is going to be the best way to help this person now? But you always need to remember that this person came to you for healing. And so they're seeking your wisdom as well. And even if all you hear during the first day is teach them how to ground, then that's where you start. And then you might want to drop another line or two about the energy protection, and being more mindful of what they expose themselves to energetically, people, places, and things. But yes, you need to address the overall picture, because especially with depression and anxiety, a lot of that's connected to the brow chakra, and you have to have a conscious level approach for this as well. So seek the answers from your guides for each specific client, because what might work for one person may not be the right answer for someone else. And your approach, even when it comes to the grounding and the shielding, it's probably going to be different. Like I see some people who need to shield using their solar plexus light as well as the divine white light. And in that instance, this is the guides telling me they've got low vibe in their solar plexus. We need to amp it up. And just by using that yellow light in itself, it's going to help strengthen their power place. And so tune into each client and see what their specific needs are.
I know that we touched on this a little bit earlier, but we've got a few people asking if you can clarify the clair senses for us, please.
Okay. Clair senses, these are your psychic gifts. And I always say that the foundational gifts are your gut intuition and empathy. And then once you sort of learn and expand upon them, you open the doors or open them further to your clairs. Clairaudience is the gift of hearing. You can hear externally, you can hear internally. Claircognizance is the gift of knowing. It's just like your intuition, but it's expansive from there. So you may all of a sudden have information about a place just by walking into it that you would not have read about before or have no reason to know, but all of a sudden you walked into this old Victorian house and you have an understanding. This was built in the early 1800s by a wealthy banker family that you had no awareness of before. Clairsentience is the gift of feeling. This can be feeling someone's pain who's sitting across from you, feeling the pain or the emotions from spirit who has crossed over. This can be feeling the touch of spirit when they come over and place their hands upon you. And the feeling, that's another one where there's a lot of sort of different levels to it. Claircognizance is sort of cut and dry, but clairaudience, clairsentience, and clairvoyance too have an array of ways in which you can receive them. The clairvoyance is the sight, and that is being able to see through your mind's eye. You can see externally where you realize this thing is etheric, but I still see it outside. There's also internal, and that's more where it's like a projector inside of your brain. Think of when you think of your, when you're contemplating your favorite scene from a movie inside of your head, it's a lot like that. But it can also have a variation in how strong you get the visual versus how light or even spatial it is, if you will. And there's also other senses like clairgustance and clairscent. Clairgustance is taste. I feel like that's more of a supportive type of sense. And then the scent that comes from your nose, that's smelling Aunt Elma's perfume when she walks into the room, even though she's crossed over. Whereas the taste, I have a friend who is a psychic medium, and she's been drawn towards working on cold cases. And so she has been getting that taste of dirt in her mouth. And that dirt has been symbolic of supporting this drive to go towards it. And once she's committed to it, she doesn't get the dirt anymore.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Jasper is curious. Do you still use Doreen Virtue's books and cards after she denounced mediumship? I want to use her things, but I'm worried because she denounced.
Yeah, Doreen's on a new level now. And, you know, that's her journey. That's cool. I could care less about whether she denounced or not. You got to do what's right for you. I still use her cards. I really only bought like 1 or 2 books of hers. And I have to say that even when I bought the books, I felt like there was some value there, like the basics with the angel numbers and the introductions to the archangels. But the rest of it, I didn't connect with. And same goes, I forget what even the second book was that I got of hers. It had to do with understanding basically like where your soul resonates from, like, are you an Atlantean, a Palladian, like that type of thing. And I didn't connect with it at all. I still use the cards because I feel like there's value there, but I use other decks as well. And I see them on a rotation, if you will. Like sometimes I don't pick up a deck for months, even a year or 2, and then I start to feel called towards it again. And so that's a lot about following your intuition. I know that she denounced everything and is totally against this. And I'll be honest, my higher self must have known that a question would be posed about that today, because I was getting a lot of information about this feeling of sort of being false, and then a lot of interference with ego. And so whatever she went through, from what I was given, has more to do with an internal battle about whether she really knew what she knew, whether she was, leading people in the right direction or the wrong. And so she was having some sort of struggle there that led her to the place of where she is. And that's fine. That's her journey. But follow your gut. There's so much more material out there. She did a great job marketing herself and aligning with Hay House and getting her information out there. And there's value to it, but there's way more than Doreen Virtue out there. And so I would just say, expand your horizons, if you will. And so I do know we did just hit 12:02. So we can take one more question and then we're going to close the feed for today.
Okay. We've addressed so many things today. It's so exciting. Let's see. So there are several questions about discernment. Like when you're talking to spirit or your angels, how can you make sure that it's an angel and not something else? Is there a trick that you can do there?
That goes back to training and really having someone who teaches you the ropes with it. Because like I said before, this is not cut and dry. And so, a reason why we have an array of psychic senses is because, especially when you're feeling your way through a particular connection or you're just developing your gifts, you want to try to use as many of your senses as possible. And so one of the best things to do when you're working on a connection is to ask, are you 100% of the light? And if you hear yes to that, or you feel a wave of love and warm energy, this in return is a yes. Now, if you start feeling cold, panicky, angered, this is an indication that this is a negative energy or entity. If you hear no or complete silence, or perhaps you even hear like a growl or something like that, then you need to close channel, call in Archangels Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael ASAP, denounce whatever is in your space, and then I would take it a step further and smudge. But you should use all of your senses to allow you to feel out the connection. See how you feel. If you start feeling like you're going to throw up, that's another sign that this is not a good thing. And what does your gut tell you? If it feels all right and you're hearing yes, and it's a loving, encouraging sort of sensation, you're getting positive energy, whether it be visually or through your clairaudience, then start to develop ways in which you can trust. Ask for the name, ask for them to give you some sort of sign of how they connect with you, or ask them for a helpful tip that will get you through your day, and start to build that, mutually beneficial relationship, because their benefit is seeing you thrive and succeed and form a connection with them. And your benefit is all the abundance they bestow upon you through their guidance. And so work on that back and forth with them, and I think that you will find success.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So thank you everyone who has tuned in live, and to all of those who are going to watch the broadcast later. From Suzanne and I, we are grateful for your time, your attention, and all of the love and support that you offer. And so feel free to watch the broadcast as many times as possible, because especially if you're here on the live feed, you're probably caught up in what's being said right at that present time, and you may have missed something. There's a lot of valuable information that came through, not only from our loving guides, but from your questions. And so thank you all. This is the first of who knows how many live Q&A sessions that we will be offering. So tune into the channels, connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube. You can subscribe and see the videos that I post, whether it be live or pre-recorded, first and foremost. And drop us a line. Let us know how you enjoyed this, and feel free to share as well. So thank you, everybody.